Hey everybody, Happy New Year. I hope that everybody had a safe and healthy New Year. And I just wanted to start this new year off by talking about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a really long time. I just didn't know how to talk about it or what to say because there's so much to talk about. But I just want to make this video for the new year in hopes that, it will bless somebody and that it will encourage somebody. In this video, I will be talking about my fertility journey. As some of you may know, that I do have two children. I have a boy and a girl. But before I had those children, I did deal with infertility. And dealing with that, it kind of put me in a dark place when I was going through that. So I really hope that in making this video again, that it will encourage somebody and hopefully bless somebody. I have never made a video before talking about this subject. It's a very sensitive subject, but I do feel like I need to share this with somebody. I don't know who this video is for, but I feel like this testimony will hopefully let someone know that you're not alone. So I'm a little nervous. Again, this is my first time making a video, so just bear with me. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I did take a little bit of notes because I wanted to paint a clear picture of what I went through. And I want it to be, I want you to kind of understand it because there's so much that I dealt with infertility. So I am going to go ahead and just talk about it. So I'm going to talk about when I first had my first pregnancy back in 2015. Back in 2015 in October, I got pregnant, and it was an ectopic pregnancy. Some of you may know that an ectopic pregnancy is basically when your embryo is implanted outside of the uterus. In a normal pregnancy, your embryo is planted after conception. Typically, the egg is implanted in the uterus. With an ectopic pregnancy like mine, my embryo was implanted in my left fallopian tube. Now, with that being said, I didn't know that I was pregnant. We weren't trying to get pregnant, but we weren't trying not to get pregnant, if that makes any sense. So I ended up getting pregnant, and I took a pregnancy test because my period was delayed. It was late for like weeks. I think it was like a month late. So I went ahead and took a pregnancy test, and I took that pregnancy test. It was positive. But I was worried because I was bleeding. So right off the bat, I assumed that I was having a miscarriage. So I went to my OBGYN. My husband and I, we went there, and we basically told her, I'm bleeding, but I did have a positive pregnancy test. So she did a pelvic exam, and she gave me a pregnancy test, and she confirmed that I was pregnant. But she did order an ultrasound because I was bleeding. So obviously there was something, going on. So I remember going for the ultrasound in the next room. And I remember they did a vaginal ultrasound where they put this wand in you vaginally. And they basically, look for a heartbeat or any sign of a baby. And as they were doing that process, I just remember not hearing anything. And I remember not seeing anything in the womb, which would be my uterus. I didn't see typically when there's a baby, there is something there that you can see. So in my case, there was nothing there. She kept looking and she kept looking. And I remember her taking the wand for the ultrasound and moving it upward near my tubes. And when she did that, to our surprise, there was the embryo where it had implanted. She took some measurements, and then she sent me back down to the doctor. After that happened, my doctor explained to me that I was definitely pregnant, but I was having an ectopic pregnancy. I had never heard of an ectopic pregnancy until then. And she basically told me that, a baby could not live, it couldn't grow, that it wasn't going to be a viable pregnancy. So she basically told me that my body she would have to make my body miscarry, because at this point my cervix was still closed, so I wasn't passing any tissues from the embryo. So she told me that the dangers of keeping the baby there could cause my tubes to rupture. It could cause internal bleeding, which could lead to death. So she made it very apparent that I needed to go ahead and pass this baby, miscarry this baby, because a baby couldn't grow or survive in my fallopian tubes. So she gave me a shot. I don't remember what the shot was called. It was like a I don't know if it was I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so it's kind of a blur, because I'm kind of going back to 2015. So I don't remember what the shot was called, but I do remember she gave me a shot, and she told me that within a couple of days that this shot would make my body naturally miscarry. So I took the shot, and after days, I did start to bleed, and I did start to pass the clotting of the tissue from the embryo. With that process, it lasted for probably about a good 3 months. It happened in October, and I didn't stop actually bleeding until January of 2016. So the process of having that ectopic pregnancy and expelling, the embryo and everything like that, it took about 2 to 3 months. It was a long journey because, I would have bleeding, like breakthrough bleeding off and on in the form of a period. When I had the ectopic pregnancy, I was around 6 weeks. So I wasn't super far along, but that's about 2 months. So about 2 months. So I was pretty far along. So it did take my body a while to kind of discard of that. So after that happened, April of 2016. Now, all of this happened in 2015, in the latter part of 2015. So after I experienced the ectopic pregnancy in 2016, I had I was pregnant again. And this time it was a chemical pregnancy, which is basically a very early miscarriage. A lot of times women have chemical pregnancies and they don't even realize they're pregnant. In my case, I had a late period, so I decided to go ahead and take another pregnancy test, just because I knew that I had that ectopic pregnancy, a few months ago. And I took a pregnancy test. It was positive, and of course I was bleeding, so I went back to my OBGYN, and she, confirmed I was pregnant. They did another ultrasound, and in that ultrasound, it did show that I did have an embryo, but it did not implant in my uterus. I mean, it implanted in the uterus, but from what they could see on the ultrasound, it was miscarriage. It was an early miscarriage. It wasn't an ectopic pregnancy this time. It was just a chemical pregnancy. So from 2015 and 2016, I had my miscarriage in 2015, which was the ectopic pregnancy, and I had the chemical pregnancy in 2016. So we took a break. My husband and I, we did a little bit of traveling. I graduated from college, and we decided to start back trying in the later part of 2017. So my doctor had told me to just kind of give my body a break, allow my cycles to normalize, and just kind of relax. So that's what we did. So from 2006, so in the latter part, I'm sorry guys, I'm kind of all over the place, but in 2017, we traveled and we just took a break. 2018 rolled around and we still kind of just relaxed. We bought a house, the ending part of 2018, just relaxing. During that period, during that time, I still wasn't having a normal period. My period was still just kind of all over the place. I would go months without a cycle. I gained a lot of weight. And I started to feel depressed because I had never really fully dealt with the first two pregnancies. I just kind of went through it and I grieved a little bit, but I didn't really mentally deal with what my body had been through. Physically and mentally, I was still just kind of in the twilight zone, I guess. So in 2018, the ending part of 2018, we bought a home. And the beginning of 2019, we decided to, let's try again. You know, we got this house, you know, we're both in our careers, making good money. We're stable financially. So we felt like that was a good time to try. So in 2019, we went back to my doctor and we told her that, you know, we wanted to try again. She did some blood work and she basically told me that I had PCOS. She told me that because of PCOS is an hormonal imbalance. Just kind of an FYI for you guys who've never heard of PCOS. It is a hormonal imbalance, and it causes you to have irregular cycles. Some of the symptoms will be weight gain. Some women may even develop diabetes. It causes unwanted facial hair. The list goes on. Some of the symptoms that I had was the weight gain. I was pre-diabetic, according to my doctor. And I did get a little bit of facial hair, like around my chin area. So those are some of the symptoms that I had with PCOS. So I went back to her and she diagnosed me with PCOS after doing blood work. She confirmed that I had it. With PCOS, there's also a spectrum. There are some women who have milder cases of PCOS, and then there's the other side of the spectrum of women, you know, they experience, diabetes and other health concerns. I am not a healthcare provider, so I do not know exactly all the things that go with PCOS. I just know the symptoms that I had. So with that being said, she put me on metformin, which is a drug used for diabetics to control your insulin. Because a lot of times with PCOS, it's the insulin resistance that you have, which causes the hormonal imbalance. And if you don't have balanced hormones, it's kind of hard to have, regular cycles and to track, when you're ovulating. So that's kind of why it's so hard for women to get pregnant when they're dealing with PCOS. So in my case, she diagnosed me with that. They put me on steroids because they were telling me that I had cysts, and that my cysts were just kind of out of control and that they needed to go down. They told me that I needed to lose weight. Now mind y'all, I wasn't like 200 pounds, or I've always kind of fluctuate, but my weight around that time was around like 180. So for me, I'm 5'3". That's a little heavy for my height. So they basically were telling me that I needed to lose weight and that I needed to have a better diet. So I did cleanses, I ate healthy. They put me on birth control to try to regulate my hormones, as well as, regulate my periods. So I was on metformin, I was on steroids, and I was on birth control. So my my hormones were everywhere. Like, I was up and down, I was hot and cold. I probably wasn't the best person to be around at that time because I was going through so many different emotions of, why is this happening to me? Why is it taking so long? Trying to figure out what I had done for this to happen. At that time, I had a lot of friends that were getting pregnant, a lot of family members, and it just was hard. It was more of, why not me? That's what I was dealing with. Why not me? I wanted children. I've always wanted children. So I felt like I was at a place in my life where, it would just happen. I felt like when I was ready, I wouldn't have a problem with having children. I've, always led a pretty healthy lifestyle. So I just felt like it was, it would happen for me. And that just wasn't the case. So I go to my doctor. She put me on all of these drugs, and she basically tell me that come back in a couple of months and we'll go from there. Now, I kind of skipped a whole lot because before we even got to 2019, in 2018, my husband and I, we did go through a couple of fertility treatments. I think it was like in the beginning of 2018, we did an IUI, which is basically where they take your partner's semen and they give you fertility drugs to help you ovulate and to help you drop the egg. And then they take a catheter and they basically inject you with that semen in hopes that you'll get pregnant. So we did go through that twice and that did not work. Both times we just never got pregnant. And then I had to do an injection where I basically was giving myself a shot in the stomach. Basically, it's a trigger shot, and it's basically to trigger ovulation. I did that a couple of times. I was taking ovulation tests. I was doing basically everything to pinpoint ovulation and getting pregnant. So we're going to go back to 2019. I forgot to tell you guys that I did do those things and they did not work for us. So back to 2019, after all of those things failed, we went back to the doctor in 2019 and decided to try again. So that's what we did. She put me on those drugs and she told me to come back in like August so that they could check my cysts and check my hormone levels to see if the steroids and if the birth control and if the metformin were helping. So I went back and this time I decided, instead of going back to that doctor, I decided to get a second opinion. So I went back to a doctor near the job I was working at the time. I went back to another OBGYN, had really good reviews, and they ordered an ultrasound. Now me going to my original OBGYN was in April of 2019. She put me on those drugs and she told me to come back in a couple of months, which would have been like the end of July. So instead of going back to her, I went to another doctor to get a second opinion on my hormones and my levels. This doctor ordered an ultrasound. So I got the ultrasound done. And when I got the ultrasound done, it was at like a place. They didn't do it in the office. It was a different place, an imaging center. So I went to get the ultrasound done. I walked in and the lady basically was like, what are you here for? I told her that I was here to basically, have an ultrasound on my eggs and to see if my cysts were going down and to just see, if the inflammation was getting any better from the medication that I was put on, which was the metformin, the birth control, and the steroids. Okay. So she laid me on the table, and she basically she did the wand, the vaginal ultrasound, and she was moving it around, and she was like, when was your last period? Of 2019. And I was like, my last period was like the end of February. And she was like, the end of February. And I was like, yeah. I said, but I have PCOS, so it's not uncommon for me to have, missed periods or irregular periods, because with PCOS, it's a hormonal imbalance. So that's why it wasn't like foreign for me to miss a period for that length of time. And she looks at me and she says, you haven't had a period because you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, that's not possible, because, I have PCOS. I've been on steroids. I've been on birth control, and I have been on all of these meds, metformin, since April. So, everything that would probably terminate a baby, I've been on. So it's not possible for me to be pregnant. And she looks at me and she's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. You are pregnant. So she took the vaginal ultrasound, the vaginal wand out of me, and she got the regular, ultrasound thing that they use. And she put it on top of my stomach and she started measuring. And as she's doing this, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I'm just like thanking God. And I'm like, is it, I have all of these questions, like, is the baby normal? What do you see? Am I miscarrying? How could this be? I have all of these questions. And she's just going through and she's just measuring. And she's like, do you want to know what you're having? And I'm like, what? She's like, you're about 18 weeks pregnant. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I haven't had any symptoms besides crazy. So I hadn't had any morning sickness. I was gaining weight, but I thought the weight was due to me having PCOS. Again, that's one of the symptoms, is weight gain. So I just was thinking that, I was working out, but as I was working out, I was still gaining weight, and I was eating everything, but I just thought it was because, I had PCOS, and plus I'm greedy too. So I just assumed that it was because of this, this disease that I had. And she's basically like, yeah, you're very pregnant. You're 18 weeks. The head is measuring perfectly. We heard the heartbeat. All 10 toes and fingers was there. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I called my husband. Now, at the time, my husband was working third shift. So I call him up and I'm like, babe, I'm pregnant. And he like, listen, I'm tired. I ain't got time for this, because I'm a jokester. So he immediately just assumed that I was playing with him. So I handed the phone over to the ultrasound technician, and I'm like, just talk to him. And she's like, yeah, she's pregnant. You may want to get down here. So we get off the phone with him. I text my mom. I'm like, I'm pregnant. And she calls me and she's like, you pregnant? I'm like, yes, I'm at my ultrasound appointment. I'm pregnant and I'm having a girl. And my mom was just like screaming, and I'm like, I gotta call you back, Mom. She's not done yet. So it was just a whole thing. Coffee. So that is how I found out I was pregnant with my girl. Listen, y'all, I had no symptoms. I literally did not know that I was pregnant. It was almost like a miracle, because my doctors, they were running blood work on me like crazy. So for me to be pregnant, I was pregnant when I went to her office in April. You know what I'm saying? Like the timeline, I had to have conceived in March, because my daughter was born in December. So her due date was actually January 8th. But I think because I was so far along, I really don't think that she was due. I think she was born in December. And I think that she was born in December. But they were saying that she was 3 weeks early. But I think she was right on time, because they really didn't know when I got pregnant. When I tell you this was like a miracle, because I was on so many drugs. Me and my husband did 2 IUIs. I was doing fertility injections. anything, you name it, diets, everything. And nobody checked to see, like, okay, maybe she's pregnant. To say that I was going to these doctors on a regular, they never checked. I mean, they were checking my blood, but they never caught that I was pregnant. I say that to say that everything happens, everything good that happens is timing. It's God's timing. Those years that I had tried to get pregnant, you know, it wasn't meant for me to get pregnant then. It happened exactly when it was supposed to happen. And the whole time I'm trying to get pregnant and I'm going through this and I'm going through depression, it was already done. He had already did it. I was stressing about it, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, but there was nothing wrong with me, because when I went to have that ultrasound done and she discovered I was pregnant, there were no cysts. There were no signs of PCOS. So, y'all, I don't even know. It just was one of those things where I could have been like, how did y'all not catch this? You know, it could have been, it just happened the way it happened. And I felt like it was supposed to happen that way. I didn't need to know, because I felt like I would have stressed. It was just like a beautiful surprise. Something that I have wanted for so long just happened naturally. Like, we weren't on any fertility drugs. We were actually trying to regulate my hormones. We were on every drug that would prevent you from getting pregnant. And I got pregnant, and my baby survived through all of that, and she was perfect. Nothing wrong, no birth defects, nothing. Everything was perfect. And I just hope that this speaks to somebody, and that you understand that everything happens in God's timing. It is all about his timing. I appreciate the process, because the process prepared me for what I have now. And I didn't think that it would happen like it did. I always thought that when I got pregnant, I would be high risk, because they said I had PCOS. I was fine. And not to say that they misdiagnosed me, I just feel like God restored what I had lost. And when God is at the forefront of the plan or the purpose, it just works out perfectly. There are no flaws. You can't explain it. I couldn't explain how I didn't know, because people were like, how did you not know that you basically going on 5 months pregnant? How did you not know that? And it wasn't meant for me to know. It happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I just thank God for restoring what I lost. I prayed to him and I asked him, God, give me back what I lost. I couldn't see me being here without being a mom. I've always wanted to be a mom. And it is the greatest feeling to carry a child and to feel that movement and to hear that heartbeat. And, pregnancy, being a mother, comes in it looks different. It may not look, you may not carry that child. You may adopt, or you may go a different route. Whatever it is, keep at it. Don't give up, and trust God, trust him, and let him order your footsteps, because sometimes we get ahead of God. And when you get ahead of God, that's when sometimes they don't always go as planned. But when God is in it, and when you allow him to work through you, I promise you, everything will fall in place. This video was going on 30 minutes. I just wanted to share part one. After having my daughter, I did get pregnant again naturally with my son. And it's only by the grace of God. So I hope that this video has blessed somebody. I got out everything that I felt like I needed to get out. If there's anything else that you guys want to know, comment below. And I hope that I wish you all the best on your journey. Continue to trust God. Continue to follow your dreams. You know, if being a mother is something that you desire, don't give up on it. Being a mother may not look like the next person's journey, but it's your journey. It's special to you. However you get there, just allow Him to be a part of it. With that being said, I am going to close out this video. I'm going to make a part 2 about my son, but I want this page I want to talk about, motherhood and what that looks like to me, my journey, and just different things of that nature. If there's anything else that you guys want me to touch on or that you want to know, just let me know. I'm open. I'm an open book. So, yeah. All right. Bye.